Good afternoon, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order if I could. If we could begin this afternoon's meeting with a moment of silent reflection, please. Thank you. First item is declaration of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Seeing none, the adoption of the minutes, and I'll turn it over to the clerk, Ms. Defoe, to walk us through the agenda. Ms. Defoe.
Item 3 is adoption of the minutes, and there is a motion that the minutes of the special meetings dated November 16th, November 17th, December 4th, and the regular meeting dated November 23rd of Council.
Very hard to hear you.
Moved by Councillor Vasilako, seconded by Councillor Beattie. Discussion? Not all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Next item.
The next item is adoption of the addendum, and there is an addendum to the regular agenda of council and standing committees to add an additional delegation and correspondence to item 4.1 of the Planning and Heritage Committee agenda.
Moved by Councillor Vasilako, seconded by Councillor Burbach. Discussion? If not, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Item 5 is report of the Committee of the Whole in camera session, and item 5.1 at the November 24th session under the Municipal Act as amended, matters concerning the following items were considered. 1 about personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees, and the second relating to advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by the municipality. And at the in-camera session, direction was given on both items. Item 5.2 at the December 7th, 2020 session under the Municipal Act as amended, a matter concerning the following item was considered. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege and communications necessary for that purpose, and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by the municipality. And at the in-camera session, direction was given. Item 5.3 at the December 9th session under the Municipal Act as amended, matters concerning the following items were considered. Security of municipal property of the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on by the municipality. And at that in-camera session, direction was given on both items. And item 5.4, just prior to this regular meeting, an in-camera session was held to consider the following items. 1 about personal matters about identifiable individuals. 2nd about personal matters about identifiable individuals. And the 3rd matter related to advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on by the municipality. And at the in-camera session, direction was given on all items.
Thank you. Next item.
Moving on to item 6, hearings of deputations and presentations. Item 6.1 is a presentation of the Annual Accessibility Award. And there is a motion that the presentation of the Annual Accessibility Award by Diane Sims be heard.
Moved by Councillor Henderson, second by Councillor Ritzma, that Ms. Sims be heard. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. I'll turn it over to Ms. Sims, and the clerk will admit her to the presentation.
Through the chair, I do not have Ms. Sims on the line at the moment. I am trying to get a hold of her.
Okay. Ms. Sims is not on the line right now. So what we'll do is we'll go to our next item and we will come back if she does arrive. So we'll turn it back to the clerk.
Moving on to item 7, orders of the day. Item 7.1 is a resolution for tax relief under section 357, subsection 1, subsection D.1, sickness or extreme poverty. And there is a motion that the owners of 649 Ontario Street be heard.
Mover, Councillor Clifford, Councillor Burbach seconding that the owner be heard. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. And we'll bring in the individual.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Matheson and City for taking the time to allow us to explain the situation. I'd like to point out that our problem started in 2011. What has not been known to council or the city is that in 2011 we started litigation proceedings in order to deal with a contamination issue that was brought to our attention. Now, this matter has been ongoing since 2011 and is set to be going to trial in Stratford. The trial date is to be set on April 1st, 2020. Okay. At this time, there is an outstanding balance of $273,000. This figure, I believe, takes into consideration a partial payment that we've made of $20,000 just a couple of weeks ago. Now, since 2011, we have been making some payments. We do understand that it wasn't the full amount and we are in arrears. But the main reason that we have not been able to do that is, number one, the property was mostly vacant to the majority of the time up until late 2017. That prohibited us from earning any income from the property. On top of that, the matter is still before the courts, but I can comfortably say that we have spent over $250,000 at least in environmental and professional fees. Our whole objective throughout the whole thing was to clean up the property and get a clean bill of health. Up until now, any payments that we've made have basically gone to paying off the penalties. Now, we did go into an agreement with the city that gives us an extension on the, in terms of paying off the balance, but that's, number one, that's pretty harsh and very difficult for us to maintain. And on top of that, that would involve us paying over $150,000 in penalties. Currently, we believe that the amount owing, if we were to count in the amount that we've put in, is 173,000 Canadian dollars. Okay, we're pretty much asking the city if they can work with us on the basis of forgiving part of the penalties outstanding and agreeing to allow us till the end of January or February to pay off a sum of $175,000 and just, ending the situation rather than prolonging it and having us suffer in the event that we, God forbid, were to miss a payment. Because our whole objective here is to clean up the property. And especially now with the COVID impact and what's going forward, the uncertainty is really crippling. I mean, it's hurt us until now, but we don't believe it's going to get any better over the next year. So we would like to, rather than go into the extension agreement, whereas we miss a payment for something that's out of our control, we would be back to where we were. We're looking for the city to say, we're not asking for a full penalties release or forgiveness. What we're saying is allow us to pay 175, 185, right? But give us to the end of January and we will, from our personal resources, again, do what we can and get this matter resolved so that it's no longer before the city. And after that, we will hope, we will going forward not get into this position again.
Thank you very much. Just if I could, Ms. Baroness, you're on the line.
Yes, I am.
Could you give us an overview of the years and the payments that have been received to date so members of council have that information?
Through your worship, that may take me a few minutes to look up some of the history on the payments.
Any member of council having a question outside of payments made or anything for the property owner?
May I add something, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
One of the reasons this matter has dragged on so long is that the environmental experts advise us that as owners, we cannot remediate the property. The simple reason that we were told we cannot remediate is that unless the source of contamination stops contamination, any efforts that we do is going to be futile. This is another reason why the matter has been in the courts for a long period of time. So we are not only looking for the courts to allow us to clean up our property, but to ensure that the contamination stops from the source as well. We believe this is a benefit to the city of Stratford as well, because it will be, dealing with a contamination. We're trying to do good here. I understand that we're not in the best position right now, but we're not in a bad position because of bad intent or ill will. We are trying to do our best to keep things clean.
Thank you. Councillor Clifford.
I was going to ask, is it uncommon to be asked for interest relief, and does it happen? Like, I haven't heard it happen before, but I'd like to ask our director if it happens very often that people ask and if it's allowed.
Through your worship, in the last 13 years, we had one request. That was in May of 2019, and that request was denied. So in terms of payments, in 2020, we did receive $20,000 a couple of weeks ago. And we also received $4,626. Prior to that, 2019, $1,000.
So what is the total of the payments then over the 10-year period? Councillor Vasilakos and Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, while we're waiting, I just have a question around if you could give a little background on what is the contamination? Is the city aware of the contamination, and what position that puts this property in with respect to even the ability to actually enter into any kind of a sale? And was the contamination known at the time of purchase?
If I could, we'll let the presenter answer this question, then we'll have to mute his microphone so Janice can come back in. Okay.
Yes, hello. At the time of the purchase of the property, there was an acknowledgement that there was contamination. The problem over the years has been getting an environmental firm to confirm the source of the contamination. They said that it was something minute, like it was not something dangerous. And I am not a professional expert on this, but they're saying that it was something that would have dissipated over time. But this has not happened over the past years. It didn't dissipate. And on top of that, we have a hard time as normal people understanding these geological reports. This is why we've had to retain different environmental experts to pinpoint the source of contamination. Now, we have been told that everybody understands that a dry cleaners is known to use these chemicals. And in the past, what they used to do is just throw it down the drain or just empty it outside. So there is no real danger going forward to the city, but we don't know. I'm not an environmental expert. Again, because of all the unknowns, this is why we've had to engage many professionals and lawyers and get reports to ensure that we can pinpoint the source of the contamination and proceed to go ahead and clean it up, because nobody seems interested in cleaning it up, to be honest.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Baroness, do you have an answer to those questions?
Yes. Since 2011, we've received about $78,000 in payments.
And the annual tax bill is roughly 20,000.
Yes, probably about 18 or 19,000. Yep.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Henderson, you had a question?
Well, I see that there's 3 options here. And the gentleman on the phone is expressing that he could probably be paying things by January. So I'm wondering if there could be a 4th option that we deny the request for tax relief, and allow an extension, I don't know, say 6 months. And that would give them time to get the ducks in order. Now, he said something about that there was supposed to be a court date April of 2020, but I think he might have meant 2021. That's my comments.
Okay, thank you. All right, the 3 options are on the floor in the report, and the staff recommendation is there. If there's no other questions, Councillor Clifford.
I will move the staff recommendation as it's read there.
Seconder. Councillor Gaffney, thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Well, which one are you picking?
The staff recommendation on page 4 is that the council deny the request for tax interest relief as presented by the owner, Stratford, and that staff proceed to enter into a tax sale extension agreement with the property owner.
I won't be supporting that. I think it should be that that they will be given an extension of, say, 6 months.
I believe that's what the tax sale extension agreement would be.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. Okay, fine.
Councillor Sabin.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, in the report it notes that the agreement is being worked on. Will the direction from council assume that the agreement is agreed upon to extend for a year?
To the Director of Corporate Services.
Yes, through your worship, the extension agreement would be 1 year. The payments would be set and agreed to. If at any time a payment is defaulted, the agreement would become void and we would revert right back to tax sale.
Is there anything further? Motion's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? 2 opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Item 7.2.
Through you, Your Worship, it is my understanding that Diane Sims, a member of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, is now on the line. Would you like to proceed with that presentation prior to commencing 7.2?
Yes, please. And I believe we already had a motion to hear Ms. Sims. So if so, I'll just invite her forward now to make her presentation.
Hello,
Hi, Diane.
am I there? Oh, okay, you have me. Okay, I'm sorry for the delay. My one phone died. Good afternoon, Mayor Matheson, councillors, and all those zooming in today. As a member of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, I am honored to speak to you and delighted to announce the 2020 Accessibility Award. Committee colleagues and I take our purpose, i.e., to improve opportunities and services, to identify barriers, and to try removing them very seriously. So today, it's with great pleasure we acknowledge Infinity Dance Studio at 451 Erie Street, this year's recipient. I quote from the application form. Dance promotes a unique form for people to express themselves, allowing people to share and express their feelings non-verbally. Dance encourages creativity through artistic expression and promotes improvement of the body and mind through freedom of movement. Well, I took that to heart, and when my colleague Judy Hoff and I visited the site, I took my electric wheelchair onto the padded dance floor, twirled it, and danced with my arms swinging. I wish you could see all the photos of the different classes of people and some in wheelchairs that adorned the walls. Their eyes lit up, their eyes lit up and lit up the way in the hallway. The studio has an accessible door. There's a bell when the door opens, and the hallway is accessible with rails. Washrooms are very, very good, but it's the dance floors, the dance studios, the whole environment is very welcoming to someone in a wheelchair or someone with another mobility problem or with a visual problem. And I have that, so I noticed the placement and the colors of the signs. And I was just, we were just delighted with it. And I have misplaced a paper that I wanted. Oh, well, I will say what it concerned was the program Infinity Dance has for people of all ages, all accessibility levels, and it's called Dance Ability. And it's the owner operator, Janine Henderson Kitchling, really believes in exercise through movement, whatever a person can do. And I believe Janine is with us on the line. And if so, would you like to say something before I virtually present it by reading it to you?
Yes. Hi, I'm here. Hi, Diane. Thank you.
Hi, Janine.
I just wanted to say what an incredible honor this is for myself and for my studio. Thank you so much. We are celebrating our 10th year, and our Danceability program has been with us since season 1. When we were building the studio, it was very important to me that it was accessible in every meaning of that word to every dancer, no matter their age, their ability. I truly believe every person with any type of challenge, no matter what, deserves the chance to feel the joy of dance and learn through the technique and the freedom that dance can promote. So I'm just thrilled to be recognized for something that makes our studio so unique. It is quite a unique program, and I'm very proud of it. So I just wanted to thank you so much for this amazing honor, and thank one of my adult students, Deb, who nominated us. Thank you, Ms. Deb, and to the city and the committee for having such an award as this. I think it's so important, and no matter what a person's challenge is, they're an important part of our society, our city, and of my dance studio. So thank you so very much, Diane and Phoebe. This means the world to me.
Okay. Well, Janine, I will read what the award says, and Mayor Matheson signed and dated it. And we will arrange a time to meet and pick it up, hand it over, and have your picture taken.
Oh, I look so forward to that. Thank you.
The Stratford Accessibility Advisory Committee would like to recognize Infinity Dance for recognizing the diverse needs of staff and citizens and responding by striving to provide a facility that is physically accessible to all. There you go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Diane.
Well, thank you. Judy and I were very delighted, and we spoke to others. So thank you for providing this.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, congratulations, Janine, on behalf of the city and members of council and the community, and to Diane and the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Thank you for your continued work on our behalf.
Thank you so much. And same goes to you. Keep up the great work, City Council.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll go back to item 7.2 on the agenda.
Item 7.2 is a resolution regarding the transfer payment agreement for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program for the public transit stream. And there is a staff recommendation that the Corporation of the City of Stratford enter into a transfer payment agreement with the Ministry of Transportation to claim capital project expenses that have been approved through ISIP, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary agreement.
Moved by Councillor Vasilakos and Councillor Beatty. Discussion? If not, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Item 7.3 is a resolution regarding the 2021 pruning, removal, and disposal of designated trees and stumps. And there's a staff recommendation that the low bid from Lang Bros Tavistock Limited in the amount of $319,066.80, including HST, be approved for the removal and disposal of designated trees and stumps, along with regular and emergency pruning services in 2021.
Moved by Councillor Bunting, second by Councillor Ritzma. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Item 7.4 is a resolution regarding the railway trestle footbridge rehabilitation, and there is a staff recommendation that council approve the award of the railway trestle footbridge rehabilitation contract T2020-41 to McLean Taylor Construction Limited at a tender price of $111,820.42, including HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary contract documentation.
Moved by Councillor Vasilakos and seconded by Councillor Gaffney. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Item 7.5 is a resolution regarding the roof replacements multifamily units in Stratford, and there is a staff recommendation that the tender for the roof replacements of 31 family units in Stratford be awarded to T. Hamilton and Son Roofing, Inc. in the amount of $194,284.29, including HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the contract agreement.
Moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by Councillor Burback. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Item 7.6 is a resolution regarding the Lake Victoria footbridge replacement, and there is a staff recommendation that council approve the award of the Lake Victoria footbridge replacement contract T2020-43 to McLean Taylor Construction Limited at a tender price of $153,806.85, including HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary contract documentation.
Moved by Councillor Beatty, second by Councillor Bunting. Discussion? Councillor Gaffney.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just got to say it's quite amazing how many bidders we got on those last three jobs. Like that's I think it's been a long time since we've seen lists that long. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? If not, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Item 7.7 is a resolution regarding revisions to the City of Stratford sign bylaw, and there is a staff recommendation that council adopt revisions to the City of Stratford sign bylaw as recommended in report COU 20-196, and that council direct staff to enforce the City of Stratford sign bylaw on a proactive basis.
Mover, Councillor Vasilakos, seconder. Councillor Burbach, discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried.
Item 8, business for which previous notice has been given and there was none scheduled. Moving on to item 9, reports of the standing committees. And item 9.1 is the report of the Social Services Committee. And there are 3 items listed for consideration as follows. Item 9.1.1 is the introduction to Bill 204, Helping Tenants in Small Businesses Act 2020. Item 9.1.2 is delegation of authorities for housing division agreements, including properties owned by the city and Perth and Stratford Housing Corp. And item 9.1.3 is social assistance recovery and renewal plan.
Moved by Councillor Henderson, second by Councillor Vasilakos. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried.
Item 10 is notice of intent, and item 10.1 is notice of public meeting under the Planning Act. And Stratford City Council will hold an electronic public meeting on January 18th, 2021, beginning at 3 p.m. to hear all interested persons with respect to official plan amendment application OPA 01-20 and zoning bylaw amendment application Z0620. This will be an electronic meeting, and a link to watch the public meeting live will be provided on the agenda, which will be posted to the city's website. A video of the meeting will also be posted to the city's website once available, and further details are provided on the attached notice.
That's for the information. Go to the reading of the bylaws.
Through you, your worship. There are 11 bylaws listed for consideration as follows. Item 11.1 is delegation of authority to sign housing agreements. Item 11.2 is to amend the Committee of Adjustment procedural bylaw to permit electronic signing of decisions. Item 11.3 is to authorize the execution of transfer payment agreement for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. Item 11.4 is the award of tender for the pruning, removal, and disposal of designated trees and stumps in 2021. Item 11.5 is the award of tender for the Railway Trestle Footbridge Rehabilitation Project. Item 11.6 is the award of tender for roof replacements for 31 Perth, Stratford Housing Corporation. Item 11.7 is award of tender for Lake Victoria Footbridge replacement. Item 11.8 is to amend sign bylaw 159-2004. Item 11.9 is the interim 2021 tax levy bylaw. Item 11.10 is the temporary borrowing bylaw. And item 11.11 is the 2021 fees and charges bylaw, and these bylaws can be taken collectively upon unanimous vote of council present.
Moving they be taken collectively is Councillor Henderson and Councillor Ritzma for bylaws 11.1 through 11. Councillor Henderson. Can you please unmute yourself, please?
Sorry about that. Thank you. I'm not going to find it again. So I'd like 11.11.11 taken separate because I don't agree with the garbage tag price on there.
Councillor Sabin, I saw your hand as well.
Thank you. I just had questions about 11.11, but I'll wait. Thank you.
Okay, anything further? So it's been moved and seconded. The bylaws 11.1 through 10 will be taken collectively upon unanimous approval. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's unanimous. So we'll go to first and second reading. Councillor Sabin and Councillor Henderson will move in second bylaws 11.1 through 10 for first and second reading. Discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Henderson. Oh, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Third and final reading. Councillor Clifford and Councillor Gaffney for bylaws 11.1 through 10. Be read a third and final time. Any questions? If not, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. A mover for bylaw 11.11 for first and second reading, please. Councillor Gaffney and Councillor Beattie. And then there's questions from Councillor Henderson and then Councillor Sabin in that order.
Okay. So I was, when I went through and looked at all the different fees, I am sorry that I'm totally against raising the garbage tag ever again, basically in the city. $350 is more than enough. Any additional times that we need more money in that department or for that part of it should come out of the tax rate now. We should just add it on like we did with the green bin. So I will be voting against this because I feel that garbage bags should stay at $3.50 and not go to $3.60. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Sedman.
Thank you. I certainly echo Councillor Henderson's comments about the garbage bag tags. And my other question was if someone could speak to, if staff could speak to the price of the cat and dog licensing fee going up from $20 to $30. I just want to know why the significant jump there.
For the cat bylaw, I'll either turn it over to Ms. Defoe or Mr. Bantock, whichever one feels most comfortable answering.
Through your worship, it's my understanding the prices for cat and dog licensing have not in fact increased. There is a price that is applied before, I believe, March 31st, and there is a price afterwards. But I will double check to ensure that the amounts included in the bylaw are accurate.
If I could, yeah, thank you. That is actually how it is reflected in the chart. I'm just wondering why the increase on March 1st is from $20 to $30.
Through your worship, that has been a long-standing practice, and it was previous direction by council. As stated, we do not increase the fees by the CPIs or otherwise. If there were to be a change, we would require direction from council.
I'll ask the CAO to respond to that as well, please. Ms. Thompson.
And just to add to that, with respect to why there is a discount and why. So there is a discount to encourage pet owners to obtain their tags at the beginning of the year. So that discount is offered. It has been offered for many, many years. So the full rate is actually the March 1st rate, and the discount is available for the first 2 months.
Okay, thank you. I misunderstood how that was. So thank you for clarifying.
Anything further? So bylaw, Councillor Henderson.
I'm just curious how much that 10 cents, if we turn this down and suggest that the 10 cents be coming out of the tax rate, do we have a figure for that?
Mr. Delovic, are you on the line?
Through your worship, yes, I am. Just give me a couple minutes to calculate that. I'm just in the process, but I'll determine a number that'll have to be added on to the tax levy if that's the direction that council wants to go in. So just give me a moment, please.
Yes, sir. That's fine. Councillor Vasilakos, you had a question?
I just had a comment with while we're waiting for the calculation. I have a little bit of concern with not doing small increases, because then we get into like the same thing as we did with parking, where we don't increase parking for a long time and then we actually realize how far behind we are in being able to even cover the expense of the parking spots, and then we have to do a big jump and it causes a lot of concern. So with some of these things, I think I prefer seeing small increments over time that can be adjusted, as opposed to finding ourselves, 5 years down the road and having to do a big increase.
Councillor Henderson.
My comment was that the garbage tags will never go higher than $3.50, because I just feel we had a big increase last year, and we had to do that because of the green bin coming in, which is widely successful, which was really good. That in the future going forward, that the rest of that will just come out of the tax base all the time. That it will never go higher than $3.50, because I think that's more than enough. We saw many people last year that ran out and bought like 50, 60 tags ahead of time because that they were concerned about it going up. And having said that, I realize that a lot of people are putting out less garbage now because they're using the green bin. I just in my own mind, I just don't feel comfortable that we go forward with that. And I'm hoping we can have, once we get the information back from the Director of Infrastructure, that we will make a friendly amendment that will not be increased. Because I know last year we did it for students, that the increase for the bus, swimming, and skating won't be increased for the next, well, it'll be 2 years now. At that point, we made it for 3 years.
Your worship, the cost, we're talking about $22,000 here.
that's a very small part of our budget, and I hope that the mover and the seconder will agree that we will not move forward with an increase for the bag tag.
Councillor Clifford.
Yeah, well, I think as Kathy was saying, a small increase, if it's small. The other thing, if we want to encourage people to use the green bin and to put out less garbage, if you say you don't want it ever higher than 350, I think you're getting yourself into a box. So I don't want to change the motion, and I support the motion on the floor.
Anything further? If not, I'll call the first and second reading of bylaw 1111. All those in favor? Opposed? 3 opposed, that carries. Third and final reading. Councillor Gaffney and Councillor Bunting. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? 3 opposed, that carries. Thank you. Next item.
Through your worship, item 12 is the consent agenda. And are there any items listed on the consent agenda to be considered by council?
Seeing no hands from council at this time, we'll go to our next item.
Item 13 is new business. Are there any new business items?
Seeing no hands there, we could take a motion to recess to reconvene in standing committees. And our first one would be Planning and Heritage. And in the absence of Councillor Ingram, I'd ask Councillor Ritzman to chair that committee. Could I have a motion to recess to reconvene, please? Councillor Clifford and Councillor Beattie. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Ritzman will convene in Planning and Heritage.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. So I'd like to call the Planning and Heritage meeting to order. Open session. Any disclosures of pecuniary interests? Seeing none. Delegations. There are none scheduled. And item number 4, there is an addendum to the Planning and Heritage Committee meeting agenda. And I know it was received earlier, a motion to receive that addendum, and that is referring to correspondence and a presentation as well. So a mover, Councillor Henderson, second by Councillor Bunting. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So moving to item 4, and this is the planning report on draft plan subdivision 31T19-001 and zone change application Z09-19 at 236 Britannia Street. And I'm just, I'm inquiring, is the interim manager, Mr. Lunison, are you there? I don't.
Yes, I am.
Would you like, what's your would you like to make your presentation at this time? And then I'd go then further to our other presenters from the community.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
I hope everybody can see the presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, what we have here is 2 applications. One's an application for a zone change and the other is for a draft plan of subdivision. The applications were submitted in 2019 and both have undergone revisions since that time. The application for the zone change amendment is to go from institutional future residential special to a number of residential zones and a park zone. There are 2 residential first density zones one along the periphery of the property on the east side, and this lot here. The other two residential first density zones are interior. There's a residential second density zone abutting some multifamily blocks, a residential fourth density zone, which are street townhouses along proposed Street A, a multifamily block that is proposed to be zoned residential fourth density, and a stormwater management block that is proposed to be zoned park. Mr. Chairman, in the plan of subdivision is proposed to contain 50 single detached dwelling lots, or 6 semi-detached lots. There will be 9 street townhouse blocks in this location here, 1 multifamily block, a stormwater management block, and 2 walkway blocks, one on the east side of the property, one on the west side of the property. All those lots and blocks will be served by 2 new streets. Mr. Chair, the property itself is commonly referred to as the old fairground lands, and it's approximately 7.7 hectares in size, about 19 acres in size. It's surrounded by the Rotary Complex to the north, single detached dwellings and apartment complexes to the east, single detached dwellings to the west, and apartment buildings to the south. As you can see from the property, it's predominantly vacant. This is a photograph from Britannia Street, and this is a current aerial photo of the site from Google. And as you can see, it's vacant, the buildings and structures. Mr. Chair, the lands are designated special policy area number 16 in the official plan. That policy says that the standard residential area policies apply, but in addition, there are 3 additional policies for guidance. One is that the minimum density for the overall site would be a net of 25 units per hectare. That's 10 units per acre. Also, that the future buildings will have a form, massing, and appearance that's consistent with the character of adjacent buildings. And lastly, that the future development will have a public road access to the Stratford Rotary Complex. The lands are zoned institutional future residential. What that means is that current permitted uses on the property include a trailer camp, a hospital, a post-secondary school, or an auditorium. Some members of council may remember that the city went out, had a request for proposals for this property in 2013. No bids were received to that request for proposal. In response, the city initiated a review of the site. That led to the Special Policy Area 16, which came into effect in 2016, and it also led to some engineering studies on stormwater management and sanitary servicing. In 2017, the city issued a second request for proposals. 6 bids were received, and Warner Bromberg, the current applicant, was a successful bidder. Mr. Chair, we evaluated this application on a number of criteria. We evaluated the site on its suitability for the requested development. We reviewed it against the provincial policy statement, the 2020 provincial policy statement. We evaluated it against the City of Stratford official plan, including Special Policy Area 16. We reviewed it against the comprehensive zoning bylaw, against department and agency comments, responses, and the public response. I'd just like to go into 2 areas into more detail. We acknowledge that the grades on this property must change in order to address stormwater management, and that's to direct the water to the stormwater pond at the north end. Originally, as you can see, some of the grade changes were in excess of 2 meters, 2.4 meters. As a result of the property owner working with the city engineering department, the maximum change in grades is now 1.2 meters. The other thing I'd like to bring to your attention is building height. Originally, the applicants were requesting a 12-meter maximum building height. Currently, the residential zones allow a 10-meter building height. They asked for the special permission for 2 reasons, but one of the main reasons was grading. With the change in grading, which, as you can see from the original submission to the new submission, and a change in the pitch of the roof, what we've done is been able to lower the height. And so the special provision to the zoning is now 11 meters as opposed to 12. And again, much of that has to do with the fact that we have to change the grades on the property to direct water into the stormwater management pond. Mr. Chair, in response to the public, we heard a number of concerns. They were concerned about the loss of green space. They were concerned about special revisions to the zoning bylaw. They expressed concerns about the lot sizes, the character of the area. We heard concerns about traffic, grading and flooding, building heights, as I said previously, about a lack of privacy, loss of trees, and a reduction in property values. And I'll quickly go through each of those. This is not considered green space. When council decided to sell the lands in 2013, they decided it was not required, parkland was not required for these lands, and that any future development of these lands would be cash in lieu of parkland. And that's what we've included in the recommended conditions of draft approval. Mr. Chair, it's not uncommon for us to add special provisions to the zoning bylaw. We've done it in a number of new developments. And part of the reason the city is going through the comprehensive zoning bylaw review is to update the regulations in the bylaw to bring them up to speed with current practices. So we don't believe that just because they're requesting special provisions to the zoning, that's a concern. We have heard concerns about lot sizes too small. Mr. Chair, the special policy area requires a density of 25 units per hectare. In order to achieve that density, we need to have a mix of dwelling types. That mix of dwelling types is also consistent with the official plan policies, directing that we offer a range of housing types in each community. Grading and flooding, the future development will be reviewed by our engineering department to ensure it meets the city standards with respect to grading, and it will not direct stormwater from this development onto adjacent lands. Again, that's part of the reason why there is that change in grade. With respect to traffic, the subdivider or the developer did submit a traffic impact study. Engineering has reviewed the traffic and accepted its recommendations. Basically, the traffic study says there will not be significant impacts in the area, and that's provided that the road to the Rotary complex is closed during large crowd events. With respect to height and massing, I do believe that from the original application, steps have been taken to reduce the height and massing. And again, the grade has changed and the proposed increase in height is from 12 meters to 11 meters. With respect to the lack of privacy, the official plan does support the protection of privacy, but I don't believe the official plan means that means you won't have the ability for people to look onto your property. It means that provided people use their property in accordance with the city bylaws and regulations, they won't be interfered with. And there's nothing which suggests there will be a lack of privacy beyond the norms as a result of this development. We heard the public talk about trees, and unfortunately, there will be most trees on the property will be lost. This is really a result of the fact that we have to regrade the lands to direct water to the stormwater management pond. In order to try and preserve trees surrounding property, we've had a condition of draft approval that requires the owner to protect those trees during construction. We've added conditions that require the owner to plant street trees through the subdivision process. And we've also will go through site plan approval on the multifamily blocks and require tree planting and vegetation in that process. Lastly, we heard about reduction in property values, and there's been no evidence submitted of any type that demonstrates there will be a lack of property or reduction in property values as a result of this development. Mr. Chair, there have been some revisions from the original circulated application that we think they're relatively minor in nature and in response to the feedback from the public and the agencies. As a result, based on our evaluation, we are recommending the following. The council pass a resolution that no further notice is required. that the zoning be amended from institutional future residential special to 2 residential first density zones, a residential second density zone, 2 residential fourth density zones, and a park zone. And lastly, that council grant draft approval to the plan of subdivision containing 50 single detached dwelling lots, 6 semi-detached dwelling lots, 9 street house blocks, 1 cluster townhouse block, 2 walkway blocks, a stormwater management block, all served by 2 new local roads, because we believe that the applications conform to the provincial policy statement. They conform to the City of Stratford official plan, including Special Policy Area 16. We believe it's sound land use planning. We will believe it'll provide a range of housing types for the existing and future residents. We have heard the concerns of agencies and the public, and we've taken steps to address those. Mr. Chairman, we believe that these applications are in the best interest of the public. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lunison, and it's good to hear your voice again. Just wondering if through the clerk, I can't see the entire council. Wonder if we can, thank you very much. There we go. Are there questions for the interim manager from council? Councillor Seven and then Councillor Burback.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Lunison, for that detailed presentation. I just, you did speak to it quite a bit, but I know there was effort put into addressing the concerns of residents that was brought up at the public meeting. I don't know if you had anything else to add to how that has been addressed, particularly in the R42A on the west side of the development. I know you did speak to that, but I wondered if you could just comment how that has been addressed by the plan here.
Thank you, and through the chair. As I said, we heard a number of concerns from traffic to building height and mass to loss of vegetation to grading. And I do think the combination of recommended conditions and the revised zoning do address most of those concerns. We have not changed the rear yard setback for these lands. We've allowed a reduction in the front yard setback to move the buildings as far away from the west property line as possible. We think that actually gives us a chance to examine some pedestrian-oriented development, but we've tried to maintain that setback. So again, I do understand the concerns of some of the area residents. I think we've taken steps to mitigate some of those concerns. I'm sure we haven't addressed them all, but we have taken steps to address them. In addition, there will be a requirement that fencing be constructed along the west property line through the site plan approval process. The standard 1.5 meter height of that fence is our normal standard. If council believes that a different height is appropriate, then they can modify that one condition of draft approval, and certainly would have no objection.
Thank you, and I do appreciate the efforts made in that regard, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seven. Councillor Burback, and then Councillor Vasilakos.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a couple of questions. One actually was inspired by, you just mentioned a pedestrian-oriented development along the west, was the west border. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Through the chair, actually, we have a special provision for all the lots and blocks in the subdivision, with the exception of the multi-block, I think it's block 64. We're trying to maintain a standard rear yard setback. So we've reduced the front yard setback, allowing the buildings to be pushed forward to the street, allowing for more pedestrian-oriented development, eyes in the street, so to speak. So the buildings can move closer to the street. The one exception is the garage. We still require a garage to be set back enough to allow a parking space between the garage and the road lines. So other communities have reduced the front yard setback to encourage pedestrian-oriented development. We believe this is a good test case. And we've done it for all the lots and blocks in this subdivision with, again, the exception of, I believe, block 64.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know that the pedestrian-oriented development meant putting houses closer to the street, which is fine because I guess there'll be a sidewalk there. So that meaning that there will not be additional walkways at the rear of any of these properties?
Through Mr. Chair, that's correct. There's no walkways behind lots. Pedestrians would walk on the street. There would be eyes on the street. And there are two walkways that link this subdivision with the existing subdivisions to the east and the west.
Okay, thank you. And actually, my next question was about the two walkways. I think the last time this came forward, I was asking about cycling infrastructure. And of course, if these are local roads, then bikes can easily ride on the local road. But I'm wondering if, and I don't know, maybe Mr. Dulovic has information on this. I mean, we're calling them walkways. Would they be wide enough to be considered cycling infrastructure as well? Or could we make sure that they are so that cyclists could also use those pieces of infrastructure?
Mr. Deluvic, are you available to answer that question?
Yes, I am. Through the chair, we would deal with that during the detailed design phase to look at it. The widths are enough to accommodate, maybe we construct multi-use trails as opposed to just simply sidewalks along them. So we'll take that back to consider, as I said, during the detailed design of the actual subdivision.
Thank you. Yeah, I think as a cyclist, we like to have the shortcuts that pedestrians do. And if we want to make sure that it's safe, that those spaces can be shared. The other thought that I had around trees. So there are a number of trees and obviously they do need to come down because of the grading issues you're saying. But I think the value in the trees, I mean, there's a lot of value, obviously, environmentally speaking, but also for privacy reasons for the existing properties. So I'm wondering if, even though we're taking out existing trees, would there be any appetite for asking them to put trees along the existing property lines in the rear yards of these properties to provide a little bit more privacy because we'll be removing quite a bit. And I don't know if that could come out of the parkland percentage of parkland dedication funds or not.
Through the chair, I think part of that may be a question that is best directed toward the applicant. For the multifamily blocks, the street townhouse blocks, we can certainly include vegetation along the rear lot lines as part of the site plan review process, and we can modify the condition to a condition of draft approval to address that. For the single attached dwelling lots that are along the east side, it's a little more difficult because 5 years from now, it won't be a significant tree. It wouldn't be large enough to be covered under the City of Stratford tree cutting bylaw. So if somebody removed that tree, we'd have no recourse to have them return it. We could, again, the developer or the owner may wish to plant trees in the back there, and I would think many of them would stay, but if a property owner 5 years from now removed it, we wouldn't have any recourse to have them replant it.
Right, thank you. I do think that, especially along where those townhouses are, that would be an ideal location for the trees. But yeah, I think it would be value added for the property owners in most cases. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burbach. Councillor Vasilakos?
So one comment and then a couple questions. I do actually like the idea of bringing the front of the house closer to the street, but keeping the garage further back. It gets away from that garage forward look. It brings porches forward, and if you go to communities that have tried this, it does really look a little more pedestrian and neighborhood friendly. So I appreciate that we're trying that because I think it's something that could actually create more sort of interactive neighborhoods. I do have a question around, there was some comment about that road now will actually, there will be a road connecting to the Rotary complex and the need for additional traffic study or information on that. If the traffic volumes upon are exceed what would be a local road, would that then require additional pedestrian facilities or consideration of cycling infrastructure along those roads if the study looking at a connected road were to actually tip it over to, let's say, a collector road volumes?
Through the chair, there's nothing in the traffic study that suggests we would reach collector road volumes, with the exception of when there's an event that's going on at the Rotary Complex, and when there's an event going on at the Rotary Complex that's going to generate a large crowd. The traffic study recommends that the road connection, not the pedestrian connection, but the road connection to the Rotary Complex be temporarily blocked off. I do think that there will be sidewalks that lead pedestrians to the Rotary Complex. Again, there's nothing in the report that suggests that the traffic volumes would reach collector road volumes.
Okay, thank you. And the one final note, when you were saying about the height of the fence at 1.5 meters, that staff would be amenable to increase in that height. What would be a reason? I'm just curious because what would be a reasonable height to ask for? Would it be going to like a 2 meter fence, or what could that look like?
Through the chair, normally it would be a 6 foot high fence, which would be 1.8 meters. A 2 meter high fence is about 8 feet, and that's a pretty high wood fence, and there's a lot of wind loading that can happen with a wood fence of that height. So normally if you're trying to screen an area, 1.5 to 1.8 is sufficient.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was asking you.
Thank you, Councilor Vasa. Anything else? You're fine. Just going to the tree piece for a moment, Mr. Lunison. I know on the former fairgrounds property, there are some dedicated trees that were placed there over the years. I'm just wondering if you could review that with the developer, and perhaps some of those dedicated trees be, if they're not already been tree spaded and moved to another location. I'm just wondering if that could go on record, just because I know some families have over the years donated trees and they've grown to be wonderful trees.
Mr. Chair, yes, we'll touch base with community services on the dedicated trees.
Thank you. Okay, any other, Councillor Henderson, thank you.
I just want to have this crystal clear in my head. So basically when the fall fair, the garlic festival, the cow thing, like when those types of things are going on, the entrance from the back way would be, from that section would be closed off. So we basically would probably close it off on Britannia Street.
Mr. Luna or Mr. Delovic?
Through the chair, no, it'd be closed off in the Rotary Complex itself. We'd do a closure there, but we probably have to have a sign up at Britannia advising that access to the Rotary Complex is closed.
Well, that's what I meant. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Any other questions for Mr. Lunison? Seeing none. And I'm assuming, Mr. Lunison, you'll stay by in case some questions do come up. I want to turn to your addenda for a moment, if I may, and I need to just sorry about that. So there were 2 items on your addenda, and I'd like to address a motion that the correspondence from Sean Lisa be received. If I could have a mover for that. And Councillor Burbach will move that. Councillor Bunting will second that. Any discussion on that? And I thank Mr. Lisi for those comments. All in favor? And that's carried. And the second motion from the addenda is that the presentation by Kristen Barsdale from GSP Group be heard. A motion for that. Councillor Henderson will move that and Councillor Gaffney will second. All in favor? That's unanimous. Ms. Barsdale, are you available?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. So I think we'll let the clerk share the screen for you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I will keep this pretty brief. Mr. Lunison touched on a number of points in clarification that I wanted to bring up as part of this presentation. And by all means, of course, I can answer any questions you have at the end. My name is Kristen Barrisdale. I'm from GST Group, and we have been the agents acting on behalf of Warner Bromberg with respect to the proposed development. Jeff, if you could change the slide. So as Jeff touched on, the draft plan of subdivision has essentially remained the same with regards to the mix and types of units that were previously shown to council in November of 2019. There have been some small tweaks as a result of the comments that we received both in advance of that November 12th public meeting, as well as comments that we had received from departments and agencies leading up to and then after that meeting. Next slide, please. So this is just a brief summary of the modifications. There was a slight relocation of block 66, the access point. So block 66 is the future multiple development block, or the multi-unit development block. We had previously aligned the access immediately adjacent to the semi-detached dwelling units. However, we've changed it to be central to the block because of grading considerations and then the way that Street A crests and how the property will drain. As Mr. Lunison touched on, there has been some slight changes to the access to the Rotary complex. Again, this is just to bring the concept and the proposed street into conformance with the city's minimum standard requirements. There was also some changes to reflect the right-of-way width for Street A. There is a jog or an irregular pattern or jog that's associated with the affordable housing block that's owned by the city at the southwest corner of the site. And then as Mr. Lunison touched on, there has been some changes to the grading overall site. Generally, the grading has been reduced from overall from about 1 to 1.5 meters from the previous grading that was presented and was used to inform the draft plan of subdivision. There has been some changes as well to the zoning. So as Mr. Lunison touched on, we've scaled back on the maximum height requests for both the singles and townhouses. We've also asked to introduce definitions for stacked townhouses and back-to-back townhouses as a permitted use. This is not something that is currently contemplated in the zoning bylaw, so this is more of a housekeeping consideration. This is being introduced as a possibility for the future multi-unit development block. So it won't apply to the street fronting townhouses or the semi-detached. Again, this is just applicable to the future multiple block. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to do is just briefly touch on the majority of the comments that we had received from the public, which we know were a significant concern, and they were discussed at quite length at the public meeting. Mix of lot sizes and types of residential uses. So the size of the proposed single detached lots are definitely smaller in lot width than the surrounding uses, but they are consistent, or it is required to facilitate the density requirements that have been established in the OP for this. We did hear some comments about, first of all, the introduction of townhouses units within the existing development, and then where the townhouse unit blocks are situated. It's consistent with some of the preliminary design work and conceptual work that was done by the city to inform the conveyance and sale of this property. The townhouse blocks have also been situated, and semis have been situated to take into consideration not only the grading changes that happen around the perimeter of the site, but as well as some of the grading that happens internally where the streets crest and where drainage is draining, where it's moving across the site. The townhouse block in the future multiple block 2, we've also created some synergies with the affordable housing block that the city is currently developing along Britannia. There were some considerations or concerns with regards to traffic. As Mr. Lunison touched on, there was a traffic impact study that was done and some additional information provided to the city through the circulation process. And we concur with the recommendations and staff acceptance of the report that the increase in volume is negligible and should not have an impact on the proposed development. Next slide. Significant issue, 2 significant issues that we heard loud and clear, and we continue to work with staff, were the height and massing of the proposed development, as well as the overall grading from the site. So we have made some changes in the grading, as I indicated at the beginning of my presentation. We've generally dropped the grading across the site by 1 to 1.5 meters. which inadvertently has allowed us to reduce the maximum height of the building. So around the perimeter of the site, there's still a grade change that happens moving from this site to the adjacent properties. But we have reduced and attempted to reduce as much as possible what the massing in the rear of those buildings will look like with respect to height. The majority of the singles along Watto and the townhouses and semis that back onto Briar Hill, there will be walkout, or what we call sunshine lots. So they're partial walkouts, large enough for a big window, but not large enough to allow for a door or a complete access to the rear yard. Next slide, please. So Mr. Lunison had presented these and his concepts, and I'll just reiterate them to you. I've put some labels in to kind of help clarify what you're looking at. So this is a revised cross-section based on the revised grading of the site. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see Briar Hill Drive. So that's the current elevation of Briar Hill Drive. And then we put in there, you'll see the schematics for what the existing uses are there. The step back, and then this is essentially how the townhouse block will read for those units that back onto the townhouse block. You see straight A in the middle, and then you see our proposed multi-block. So as you can see, as you move across the site, the grade picks up slightly around that street townhouse, and then maintains generally the same height moving through straight A, and even increases slightly more as you move into the multi-unit block. Next slide, please. And then this is a similar graphic that was prepared to show the grade differential along Waddell Street. So you'll see Street B in the middle, which is the street, the proposed future street along the south end of the site, and what the singles are detached will look like. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see lot 12. It says Sunshine. This is what I was speaking of with respect to the walkouts versus lots that will have larger windows and allow for more lighting, but they're not complete walkouts. And then you see the existing structures along Waddell. Next slide. We did hear some concerns with regards to fencing and privacy, and as Mr. Lunison touched on, we have no concerns with the conditions of draft approval worded as such, requiring the inclusion of fencing. Finally, the loss of existing trees and green space. As part of the conditions of draft approval, the city will require a pretty detailed tree management and preservation plan to be completed, identifying the trees for removal, as well as the trees that could be retained. I've made a note of the commentary with regards to some of the trees that were dedicated. So that's something that we can look into as part of the detailed design once we get into registration. As part of that detailed management plan too, there will also be, for those existing species or trees that can remain on the site, we will include preservation plans and fencing details for the city in order to ensure that the root system of those trees remains as healthy as it can. Last slide. So that's it for me. I've left the draft plan of subdivision up on the slide. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Bearsdale. And so I'm entertaining questions. I see Bonnie, Councillor Henderson. Thank you, Bonnie.
I know people are going to have concerns after they see the grading amounts. So any water that's on the top ground as it's flowing down will go to the stormwater ponds. Is that right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. Most of the site is expected to drain towards the stormwater management pond that has been proposed on the site. There is a small portion along Street A, the north end of the site, that will drain out to Britannia. But the site, we've gone through extensive back and forth with the city engineering group to make sure that all the water is draining to that stormwater management facility or onto Britannia. We know that the sensitivities around drainage and standing water around the perimeter site have been a significant issue to neighbors, and it's something that we've taken into consideration and managed, or hopefully managed to address as part of the engineering design.
When you say it's going to be draining to Britannia, does that mean it's going to be going to the stormwater drains, or exactly what does that mean? Like it's not going to be going to where the affordable housing unit is? I guess my concern looking at.
No, through you, Mr. Chair, it will go out to the street and it will connect with the existing sanitary lines, or sorry, stormwater management lines out onto Britannia.
So does that go, forgive my ignorance on this, but does that sort of go into the ground and get into the pipes, Or does it run down the road, or how does it actually get there?
Sorry, Jeff, is that you? For you, Mr. Chair, it's a
Perhaps Mr. Delova could answer that, or maybe the manager of engineering.
Mr. Deluvic, are you available?
Yeah, through the chair. What will happen if it goes onto the street, it'll just go into the existing storm sewer collection system that we have there. So what staff have done when they've looked at it, they've looked at that it can accommodate it. I would imagine it's just a very small portion, a very small area that's being directed to that area, as the majority of this development is to go to the stormwater management pond.
Thank you. Councillor Clifford.
I was going to ask on the replacement trees, are they a certain size, or like obviously if the tree is a more mature tree when you plant it? So I'm curious, what size of trees will they be planting to replace the ones that they've taken out?
Through the chair, the city has minimum standards for street trees. They have to be minimum caliper, and the city also has standards for trees that are planted through the site plan approval process. So there are minimum standards in both of those instances.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Bearsdale? Mayor Matheson?
One of the challenges will be along the existing properties on Briar Hill and Waddell and the chain link fence that's there and having it removed. How do we put swales and such in and ensure that the water will be captured and not gone away? We've seen this in the past where some backyards, people start to re-engineer them themselves to deal with water problems. How are we going to look at that with a 1.5 meters, say 4.5, 5 feet, does become problematic with the drop between yards?
Ms. Bearsdale?
I think through you, Mr. Chair, it'll be a, what's the word I'm looking for? It'll have to be a layered or a strategic process in order to remove the chain link fence, to remove the trees, to restore some of the grading and some of the swales and some of the proposed grading work to ensure that there is no pooling water, and then to reinstate a wood fence along that property line. So it'll kind of be, it's my expectation that there will be a layering. Yes, it will be a complex and it'll be a kind of a fine-tuned organization between all these different things, but step by step, they'll have to take that out, correct the grading, and then put the wood fence back in.
If I may just add one more thing, for those properties, those blocks that are on Street A that back onto the Briar Hill properties, those blocks will be under site plan approval. They'll be developed under site plan approval. So moving forward, those property owners will not be able to alter the grades without approval from the city.
Thank you, Mr. Lunison. Any other questions? Any other questions from council? Thank you, Ms. Bearsdale, for your presentation. Councillor Henderson, I'm sorry.
I just had a quick one. I'm trying to bring the screen up big enough so I can see. If you live on Briar Hill, is there currently a way for you to sort of what I call a shortcut to the Rotary Complex, or do you have to go all the way around? And if there is one, will it be continued? Like, you know how there's that bridge that goes over? Like, I just wonder if there's, I don't know if there's a walkway there or not.
Yeah, there is a path. Ms. Bearsdale or Mr. Lunison, do you want to address that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we are proposing, so there is an existing trail connection or a pathway connection, it's my understanding, along Briar Hill. We will be providing a connection to that connection. So it will cut through the corner of the stormwater management facility and it come down in between some of the houses and then bring people along Street A so that they can continue on their way to the rec center.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Councillor Henderson. Any other questions for the presenter? Seeing none, I'd like you to turn back to your agenda. There is a motion that presentations by Ken Wood and Stuart McQuaig be heard. A mover for that, Councillor Henderson, and second by Councillor Ingram. Thank you. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Mr. Wood, are you available? Ken or Stuart? Ken, are you available?
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Council, for allowing me to make this deputation. I'm in a funny place because, as you know, I've nagged you guys a lot about affordable housing. So we certainly need the housing. So I'm not against the development in any core reason. However, I think there are adjustments that could be made. I'm sitting in my bedroom looking out the window a couple of 100 yards over to Briar Hill, and I see about 7 or 8 majestic, really tall trees that are currently there that are really beautiful most of the year, and I think they're beautiful now too. They just look like skeletons. But one of the things that I think needs to happen, and I should preface this by saying I had a fairly fulsome discussion with Mr. Lunison to find out the reasons why the trees might have to be removed. And the main reasons I understand it is the necessity for grading to prevent flooding, which I think everybody on council is very sensitive to. However, I'm wondering whether there can be some investigation into keeping those trees in such a way that there's a tree well around the trees, because those trees will help with drainage. They'll hold the soil together. They'll use the water that might build up there. And they're going to add to property values. One of the things that I want to point out to, I'm going to get into a bit of history, I guess. In spring of 2019, a $110,000 grant was approved to hire a climate change coordinator to reflect not only Stratford's but Perth County's commitment to doing something about climate change. In February 2020, the Beacon reported that Stratford voted to declare a climate emergency intended to name, frame, and deepen their commitment to protecting the economy, the ecosystems, and the community from climate change. So there is a clear intent that was passed by council to do that. In June of 2020, there was the tree bylaw to protect the city's tree canopy, which was almost unanimous except for Councillor Gaffney that wanted to see that happen. And I would like just to remind everybody that trees help fight climate change. They offer cooling shade. They block cold winter winds. They attract birds and wildlife. They purify our air. They prevent soil erosion. They clean our water and add grace and beauty to homes in the community. They also add property value as well, I would think. And in talking to Mr. Lunison, one of the second reason beside the grading requirement that he commented about those trees being removed is that once those trees, or if those trees were to be left there, then they become the responsibility of the private property owner, and it'll be very expensive for them to actually take it down. I think that's a good way to guarantee that they stay up. I don't think that that's a reason. City Council shouldn't be looking at private homeowners and trying to save future money from hypothetical situations by basically clear-cutting trees. I think those trees deserve to stay there. Saving those trees gives oxygen to your climate change policy. I really like you to think about that, because this is a very clear step where you can say, we really care about trees, we care about the environment, we want to do something about climate change. The other thing that I wanted to mention was, and I guess it's in response to the presentations I just watched, is I certainly hope there'll be a recorded vote on this. So I'm hoping Cody Sieben will comment on that. The comment about having the roadway to the rotary doesn't quite make sense to me, because if you're talking about closing off traffic for peak periods when there's events there, which is almost all the time in a non-COVID environment, I don't see the necessity to have that connection there at all, that road, that traffic. You're going to incur extra costs and all kinds of things every time you want to close it, and it can cause some confusion. It can also end up turning it into a collector lane if people know that there's that quick round Churchill circle and zip up to the rotary. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I'm near the end here, is that when I look out my window, the property at 230 Britannia, the city housing, extends about 5 or 6 feet from my window. and then ends, and that becomes private property. And I'm hoping that there'll be more than just a strip of plants or something along there, that there might be a requirement that they put up actually a chain link fence to fence off the property there, because I think that that's a fair thing to ask for, to keep, you know, people feeling safe. As we know, there are problems in the building with regards to drugs and various things, and we're having some difficulties here with that. And I think doing something for safety is a small thing that could be done. The very last thing that I'm going to say, and I wish I had the confidence to sing it. Remember that that song, Today Paradise Put Up a Parking Lot? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. Big Yellow Taxi, Joni Mitchell. Realize that the decisions that you're making are not short-term economic ones. They're long-term ones as well. And by making this kind of commitment that you're going to try to save at least those 7 or 8 trees along the fence, which makes a great pathway. There are literally dozens of people, even in this weather, that I see walking their dogs up to the Rotary. It would make more sense to me to make that some kind of a multi-use trail right from Britannia straight up to the Rotary than anything else. And maybe you wouldn't need that connector on Britannia as well. And I think that's everything. I feel nervous, but I think I got everything I wanted in.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Henderson, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted clarification. The comment that was made about it would cost the homeowners money to take the trees down. I'm assuming, and I want to double check this, that what staff was trying to explain, that is, if there's going to be damage to the tree and it's going to have to come down a few years, it would cost the homeowner a lot of money. So that's usually why we take it down during construction time, so that, you know, the homeowner isn't hit with something that was caused by the construction. Is that closer to the answer, or I just want to verify that?
Mr. Lunison, can you address that?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. What happens is when there's lots of soil put on a root zone, it's not uncommon for the tree to be injured and die in 8 to 10 years. The problem is the city is long gone, the developer's long gone in 8 to 10 years, and the property owner is left with the tree that is dangerous and has to pay for removal of the tree. So with respect to a tree well, it can work in some instances, but in many instances, it just means a long, slow death for the tree, and somebody else will pay the cost to remove the tree when that tree ultimately dies and becomes hazardous. Thank you.
And I'm assuming that, what do you call those guys, tree arboretum, or the guys that come out and inspect the trees? They're sort of involved in that process, are they?
Mr.
I'm not sure if I understand the question. We have done we have had a tree assessment done of the trees currently, but if a tree were to be required to remove in 10 years, it would be the property owners who would be responsible to cover the costs if they wanted to get a study done or actual pay for the removal.
What I meant was, before we take trees down, we look at how when we're going to look at the trees down during.
Bonnie, you're echoing.
I don't know what's going on.
Try it again.
Okay, so when we're looking at taking a tree down during construction, is a specialist for trees coming in and saying, those are the ones that are probably going to die in 8 to 10 years, and these ones will probably be okay? Do we? That's what I meant. I don't mean later. I mean during construction.
My apologies. The information that we have currently from the tree expert who did the tree assessment is that they would not survive the regrading necessary to accommodate stormwater management for the subdivision.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Burbach?
While we're on the subject of trees, I don't think it applies in this case, but there is a new organization in town called treetrust.ca, and they will help homeowners to maintain older trees. So not necessarily ones that might be damaged in construction, but if you have an older tree on your property and you're finding it expensive to trim or maintain to keep the tree healthy, they will help with that. They will help cover expenses. So it's a great organization to know about.
Thank you, Councillor Burbach. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'm going to look for Stuart McCaig. Are you there? Trying to find Stuart there.
I am here.
Oh, thank you very much. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you for hearing me. I live on Briar Hill Drive, and I have objections to specifically the fourth density R4 to A zone that's along the western fence portion of this project. There's 7 6-unit townhouses planned for their block 57 to 63, and they're all backing onto the Briar Hill Drive. So originally, when this was first done as the conceptual servicing report that was done by MTE in 2015, these are all shown as R1 residential. And, you know, as the City of Stratford official plan calls for, future buildings shall have a form, massing, and appearance that is consistent with the character of adjacent buildings. And that's also part of the special policy area. So there's no way that a single family home is consistent in massing or form to a 6-unit townhouse. You know, the townhouse would have an estimated footprint of about 300 square meters, whereas a single family home has an estimated footprint of about 131 meters. So it's twice the footprint. And what's worse than that, there's 6 times the family. So the family density in that area of a backyard would be considerably higher. And reading through the staff report, there's a comment made, locating multi-unit dwellings along the southern third of the property near to Britannia will result in future buildings having a form, mass, and appearance that's consistent with existing buildings on both sides of Britannia. So where I live, I'm at least halfway up the development, and there's no way that, you know, we should be comparing multi-unit dwellings on Britannia Street to Briar Hill Drive. They're not adjacent. If you want to move them, and they talk about moving them onto the southern third of the property. The other objection I have is the maximum height. And I know Jeff at one point mentioned that the zoning allows for 10-meter heights along Briar Hill Drive properties. There's not a single property along here that's anywhere close to 10 meters. The maximum would be 8. So we're still 3 meters well above that. You know, with the 11 meters that they're suggesting, we're still 3 meters above. So when you start looking at a 7 units, 36 feet tall, and they would end up being about 960 feet long with 5 gaps of 3 meters, or 290 meters with 5 gaps of 3 meters. It's like a huge wall. So any sunshine that would come through there, especially early morning sunshine, is gone because you've got this wall up. And there's, you know, as part of the official plan, again, stable residential areas 4.5.3.1, siting of buildings in relation to abutting properties ensures there be no significant impacts with respect to privacy and shadowing. Again, you know, we're seeing significant impacts, and to suggest that we're, you know, anywhere near Britannia Street, it's not apples and oranges at all. these buildings could all be moved into the center of the development, away from the perimeter, and there's probably enough room, move them onto lots, 22 to 43. I understand there's tax dollars and sales revenue dollars in play by both the city and Bromberg, but the reality is this is not a good solution to what's going on. That's all I really have to say.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, thank you very much again. Mayor Matheson, I'm sorry.
I'll just ask Ms. Barsdale, the original draft plan to this plan, what were the driving factors to move to R4 along Briar Hill?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Our original draft plan had always shown the townhouses where they were. I think it was a number of factors that went into that. We have some, trying to get my bearings, east-west drainage that we have to consider, as well as north-south drainage we have to consider. As I spoke on earlier, there is some grading and drainage that goes out to Britannia. The concepts that I had seen that were previously done for some of the preliminary work dealing with the sale of this property showed townhouse units in and around that area. And yes, they were slight. We've extended it and we've enlarged it slightly from what was shown in the original concepts. That is a reflection of us trying to accommodate the densities on the site. One more thing I wanted to touch on at that point. I'm sorry, it escaped me, but hopefully that answers your question.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none. Thank you to all our presenters. I'd like you to turn back to your agenda, and there is a motion that written correspondence from Jeff McAllister, Bonnie Lindsay, Stuart McKay, regarding the draft plan of subdivision 31T19-001 and zone change application Z09-19 be received. A mover for that, please. Moved by Councillor Seven, second by Councillor Ingram. All in favor? And that's unanimous. So moving along, then we do have a staff recommendation, and it was covered extensively by Mr. Lunison, and it's on page number 2 at the bottom, and it continues on with the conditions of the draft approval through to page 12. Is there a mover for that motion that's there? Moved by Councillor Clifford, thank you. A seconder. And second by Councillor Beattie, thank you. Discussion, Councillor Ingram. We can't hear you, Councillor Ingram. You're unmuted, but we don't have you.
Do you have me now?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I apologize. I'm wondering if Mr. Lunison can remind me, is the density on the site a minimum density or a maximum density, or is it both a minimum and maximum?
Mr. Lunison?
Through the chair, the official plan policy is a minimum density. It's a minimum of 25 units per hectare or approximately 10 units per acre.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Ingram?
Yes, and can you remind me what their density is on the site with the current plan in front of us?
Mr. Lunison, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. According to my calculations, the proposal would net approximately 152 units which is approximately 32 units per acre.
Any other questions from council? Councillor Ingram, go ahead.
Just to follow up on that, is it 32 units per hectare or 32 units per acre?
My apologies, 32 units per hectare.
Any other questions or comments? Mayor Matheson?
What is that in actual acres and what's the city's density target?
So through the chair, this particular area has a special policy. The special policy says they have to have a minimum of 25 units per net hectare, which is 10 units per net acre. They're exceeding it a little bit, mostly because of the multifamily development that is proposed for block 66. Based on their calculations, they would have a net density of approximately 32 units per hectare or 13 units per acre.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I don't see any. Having Councillor Ingram, thank you.
Thank you, sorry.
No, it's all right.
Mr. Lunison, the original draft plan put forward, Ms. Barrisdale stated that they extended the townhouses along the Briar Hill Drive section. If we go back to the original draft plan that was submitted, what was the units per hectare they were proposing with that plan?
Through the chair, the number of units has actually gone down since that original plan. The only real change is that they've taken one single attached lot away. So the original submitted plan was 51 single attached lots, and this plan, as revised, has 50. I believe she may have been referring to a concept plan that staff had done back when we were reviewing the site to see whether special official plan policies should apply. I think in that concept plan, and again, it was just a concept plan to show how the site might develop. I don't believe there were as multifamily dwellings that went the length of Street A.
Any other questions? Councillor Vasilakos?
I didn't have any questions, but I did have a comment in terms of in looking at what's being proposed, and certainly the density that runs along Briar Hill. I think we had concerns in the past about whether it was would be more compatible to shift some of that higher density into the center of, because it was, it's a whole new subdivision, and move some of that lower density like R1 or even some of the semis along that length backing onto Briar Hill. And so, as I said, from that original concept drawing to now, we've seemed to have increased the density along Briar Hill as opposed to decreasing the impacts to the people who live along that length. I realize there's some drainage issues around that, but that is a concern to me that over time it seems to increase the impacts, not decrease the impacts to that length of housing.
Thank you, Councillor Vasilakos. Councillor Seven.
Thank you. I guess first, Mr. Wood had requested, had asked that I request a recorded vote, so I will request a recorded vote. And I'm just curious, if this is not approved by council, what would be would the developer come back with a change proposal, or what would be the process in that case?
Mr. Lunison.
I guess there's a couple different options available. We would if council does not approve this as proposed and provides us some direction, we would go to the developer and ask them if those changes are possible. If the developer is willing, we would work with the developer to revise the plan and come back with an alternative proposal to you. The time frame to make a decision has passed, in the sense that we are now at the stage where if council refuses to make a decision, the developer has an option to appeal this to the LPAT. So one option, if the developer does not consent to make changes as requested by council, they could appeal this to the LPAT. When it goes to the LPAT will consider council's resolution on this matter.
Okay, thank you. And I do echo Councillor Vasilakos' comments, but I do, as I mentioned, I do appreciate the efforts made by both parties to sort of mitigate the issues here.
Councillor Vasilakos?
And I just wanted to be clear that I actually do approve of the density and the higher density in this. I think it's good infill practice to provide a mix of housing options and to increase the density, certainly with that, missing middle that we know we need in terms of housing. My concern mostly is around orientation and where that sits with respect to the property and with respect to the abutting neighborhoods. And so that would be where I would like to see some discussion around where there would be possibility to move those around. Also, I was going to add, could I make a friendly amendment to increase that fence height from 1.5 meters to 1.8 meters? That even there's a motion on the floor, and I'm just hoping that we can at least sneak that in case this passes.
So is that friendly amendment acceptable by Councillor Clifford and Councillor Beattie?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And Councillor Beattie?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Henderson?
I have a quick question on that. Have we actually done this in the past? I guess I'm thinking about the neighbors on St. Vincent Street and that new fence that was put up for Stackpole. Is that 1.5 or 1.8? And I'm not sure if you'd have that information handy. I'm just curious, in any other subdivision, have we gone to a 1.8?
Mr. Lunison?
Through the chair, I'm not sure we've done it with a subdivision. I do believe that council has directed with other developments where, which ultimately requires site plan approval, that council has increased a screening fence.
But in this case, it's not like it's going to have a lot of cars or noise or things like this. I'm just wondering why the need for that, I guess. I just don't understand that.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. So there is a motion on the floor with an amendment, and a recorded vote has been requested by Councillor Seven. I'll turn it over to the clerk, Ms. Defoe.
Through the chair, just prior to completing the recorded vote, may I please seek clarification with regards to the fencing conditions? Are both 1 and 2 amended to 1.8, or is it simply number 2 amended to 1.8 meters?
And Councillor Vasilakos?
Both.
And I'll turn back, if it's both, I'll turn back to our mover and seconder, Councillor Clifford and Councillor Beattie. Are you acceptable to both?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Beattie?
Yes.
Madam Clerk, both.
Okay, through the chair. So when I state your name, please state whether you are in support or opposed to the motion on the floor as amended. Councillor Seven.
Opposed?
Councillor Bunting.
Support.
Councillor Vasilakos.
Opposed.
Councillor Ingram.
Support.
Councillor Burback.
Opposed.
Mayor Matheson.
Opposed.
Councillor Henderson.
Opposed.
Councillor Beattie.
Support.
Councillor Ritzma.
Support.
Councillor Clifford.
Support.
Councillor Gaffney.
Support.
So through the chair, there are 6 in support, 5 opposed. There were no declarations of pecuniary interest and no members are absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that motion is carried. If there's nothing further, I will entertain a motion to adjourn Planning and Heritage Committee meeting. Moved by Councillor Burbach, seconded by Councillor Seven. All in favor? Thank you, and we're adjourned.
We'll now move to infrastructure transportation.
Sorry, I was just getting my screen up. I'd like to call the Infrastructure, Transportation and Safety Committee to order. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof? Seeing none, the subcommittee minutes were distributed for your information and just so you can have some background on the discussions that occurred at the November 25th meeting. We do not have any delegations scheduled today. So moving on to item number 5, which is report of the Manager of Environmental Services. And item 5.1 is water, sanitary and storm service ownership policies and subsidy program. And there was a discussion at subcommittee and also
Through you, Councillor Vasilakos, you have remuted yourself.
that better? There we go. Sorry.
We lost you after you said there was a discussion. Oh, you're unmuted again.
I'm going to permanently unmute rather than using the space bar because it's having problems moving between screens. So I'll just go to the item 5.1. There is a subcommittee recommendation to approve the policies. But before I get a mover and a seconder, are there any questions for the director on these policies? Councillor Henderson?
Mine's really isn't a question. I just wanted to say how nice it was to read these policies and to have those pictures. It really helps to clarify what they're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Burbach?
I noticed that the Manager of Environment is here on the line. I was wondering if he could give like a really brief overview of what those are for the public so that they would know. It's a really great resource for homeowners.
Through the chair, good evening, everybody. Yeah, so the purpose of these policies is basically to clarify the ownership of water, sanitary, and storm services. So it's something that's very often misunderstood by homeowners, sometimes even through field staff and administrative staff. So what it is policies that just basically outline who owns what when it comes to your water service, your sanitary service, and your storm service. Because oftentimes when people have leaks on their water service, which is quite common, they're unsure of if they're responsible for it, if the city's responsible for it. And there's never really been a proper policy put in place. And I think the visuals go a long way as well. And we're going to be working with, as long as this passes, we're going to be working with the communications lead to update the city website and put out some communication on social media to help homeowners understand how their water services work, who owns what, if you have a leak, what to do, who's typically responsible, that sort of thing.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? We do have a subcommittee recommendation that the policies be approved. Moved by Councillor Burbach, seconded by Councillor Henderson. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 6, 6.1. Which is reported the city clerk. 6.1 is renewal of the town of Goderich fire dispatching agreement. And we did have a subcommittee recommendation. Before I look for a mover or seconder, are there any questions on that item? Okay, moved by Councillor Ritzma, seconded by Councillor Ingram. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you. Moving, so, and then the rest of the items are for the information of the committee. Councillor Gaffney, yes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've gotten some feedback from so a couple of residences on Redford Crescent. And their concern that was expressed to me was that now their road is narrower and they're afraid they're not going to be allowed to park in front of their houses anymore once there's a realization that it's no longer a 3-lane road. So I'm just passing that on through you to the department, just so they know. Thanks.
Mr. Zlovic, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, they can still park on the road. It was quite excessive, the street widths there, but there's nothing. There'll be no parking, no restrictions on parking instituted. Those so that they continue to park.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I will pass that along.
Okay, Councillor Ritzma.
Yeah, just on the item 7.4 with regards to litter on Foreman Ave, if I may speak to that for just a brief moment. As principal at FE Medill in Wingham, there was similar concerns about students coming and going from the high school to downtown to have lunch and then not taking care of their garbage. And what that city did at that time, or town, I should say, was they installed small garbage cans, and I'm thinking like not very big at all, but on lamp posts, and would be a spot where students could put their garbage as they were journeying back to school. I made that presentation or that comment, I think several years ago when I was principal at the district. I'm just wondering whether that can be looked at again, and perhaps that can be brought back to council, that just look at a small container, nothing big enough that people can put their household garbage in, but something small. So I put that to you, Madam Chair, as possible of that coming back to council as an option to get some of that garbage.
Okay, yeah, and so subcommittee had actually asked staff to look at where trash cans could be located in the area and to see what's available. So I think they can just take that feedback and add it to what's coming back to us. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so any other comments on those items that were for information? Councillor Burback?
Sorry, maybe we could ask Mr. Dulovic, because I'm fairly certain that they followed up immediately on our discussion and that it might already be resolved.
Yeah, through the chair, we'll look at on the polls. There were some more in CERC, some additional cans installed, and I know we had been in contact with I think it was the vice principal, where they were going to get notices out to students and get some cleanups done by the students themselves. But we'll do some follow up on that as to what it's looking like out there, and see if we can look at if there's something else that we could put out there. Okay. The only concern we had from staff, when we put out large cans, would there be neighbors that don't want to see those in front of their property? So we'll see if there's something available on the smaller side.
Okay. Thank you very much. Seeing nothing else, motion to adjourn. Councillor Bunting and Councillor Burback, all in favor? Thank you very much, everyone.
I'll call to order the Finance and Labor Relation Committee. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Unnoted. Item 3, subcommittee minutes. We have those. I think you have those. We don't have any allegations. Item 5 and item 5.1 is the 2021 insurance renewal, and we have a subcommittee's recommendation that the report regarding the City of Stratford's 2021 insurance renewal for the period December 31st, 2020 be to December 30th, 2021 be received for information. Do I have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Bunting, second by Councillor Gaffney. Any questions or comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Item 5.2 is the 2021 employee benefit overview, and we have a subcommittee's recommendation that the report regarding the City of Stratford's 2021 employee benefits overview be received for information. Moved by Councillor Ritzma, second by Councillor Basalasco. Any questions or comments? I'll call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Item 5.3 is the 2020 annual report of advisory committees. And the subcommittee's recommendation that the following 2020 advisory committee reports be received for information. Active Transportation Advisory Committee, Heritage Stratford. Accessibility Advisory Committee, Energy and Environment. Town and Gown, Stratfords of the World, and Community in Bloom. Moved by Councillor Burback, seconded by Councillor Petey. Any questions or comments? All in favor? That's unanimous. Item 5.4 is operating budget variance report as of October 31st, 2020. Subcommittee's recommendation that the operating budget variance report as of October 31st, 2020 be received for information. Moved by Councillor Gaffney, seconded by Councillor Bunting. I was going to ask our Director of Corporate Services if she has anything she wants to say about this.
Through the chair, the variances are there for each department. At this point, 2020 is looking quite well, and that's due to a lot of the cost savings that the city implemented beginning in April. We still have November and December since this report was written, and there is continued lost revenue, so we are very cautious about what the year end will bring.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on the motion that's on the floor? I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? That's unanimous. Item 6.1 is the financial statement and commentary for Festival Hydro Inc. for third quarter ending September 30th, 2020. And subcommittee's recommendation that Festival Hydro Inc. financial statement and commentary for the periods ending September 30th, 2020 be received for info. Moved by Councillor Bunting, seconded by Councillor Ingram. Any questions on this report? Councillor Vasilevsky.
I saw in the minutes that Mr. McCann had said that the board would be meeting and not having timing and would have more direction on the dividends to be paid. Has that meeting occurred, and do we have an update on that?
Well, we talked about that, but I have not heard a report, but I'll turn it back to our Director of Corporate Services because I asked her that question the other day.
Yes, through the chair, we met with Hydro this morning, the CAO and myself, and we will have some information coming about the dividends shortly.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the motion on the floor? I'll call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Item 7.1, the financial statement and commentary for Rhizome Festival Hydro Services Inc. for third quarter ending September 30th, 2020. And the staff recommendation that the Festival Hydro Services Inc. financial statement and commentary for the period ending September 30th, 2020 be received for info. Moved by Councillor Ritzman, second by Councillor Gaffney. Any questions or comments? Call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Item 8 is the 2021 Council Committee and Subcommittee schedule. And the subcommittee's recommendation that the proposed 2021 Council Committee and Subcommittee meeting schedule be approved and that the staff be directed to schedule meetings accordingly. Moved by Mayor Matheson, second by Councillor Petey. Any questions or comments? Councillor Ingram, then Councillor Vasilevsky.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to note that given the start times of these meetings due to COVID and our recent practice that we've been experiencing, my full-time position is going to start to conflict with these meeting dates, so that may start to become a problem for me.
Thank you. Kathy?
And I was just going to comment as well. I know that for staff reasons, starting at 1 and 3 works, but there are a number of councillors that have positions outside of council because council is considered part-time. And while it, it doesn't impact me because I'm flexible, I do have a concern, not just now, but moving forward. If we switch these to daytime, then we're limiting the kinds of people, or the number of people, or the number of citizens who could run for council. If now we are entering into what would be the regular workday for a lot of people. And I just want to comment that it's not just the council meetings, but there are some of the subcommittee some of the subcommittee meetings are also sort of falling into that regular workday. So I have a little bit of a concern with that.
Thank you very much. Well, obviously, if council has a desire, and I understand that if you have a full-time job, I work from home, but if council wants to change the times that we have it, I mean, that's up to council, quite frankly, and I'm sure staff will agree to whatever council decides. Any other comments or questions on the motion on the floor? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's passed. I'll accept the motion to adjourn. Oh, I got Councilor Ingram, or Councilor Henderson, I believe, has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to question. So when will we discuss the start times? Like, will we just do like a poll thing and say what times it works, or how will we do that? I think it's mostly for the council meetings, right?
It could be discussed right now, if that's your will. If there's a motion someone wants to put on the floor that they would like, and I understand that. Herr Matheson.
If we could have the clerk work with each one of the committees, would be good. And then it's just the 4 or 5 individuals that serve on those, and try to work out the dates would be good. And understanding that if we get out of COVID and can get back into a room, I'm pretty sure that we go back to more evening related meetings. The IT piece is the important part, having enough support staff on to run these through the day to ensure they're successful.
Right. Any other questions or comment on that? I believe I have called the question already in the past, so anything else anyone else would like to discuss before we adjourn? I would accept a motion to an adjournment motion. Moved by Councilor Burback, seconded by Councilor Petey. All in favor of the motion. Thank you very much. That's unanimous.
If I could, council will reconvene, and I'll turn it back to the clerk now for the first item.
Through your worship, item 15.1, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest made at standing committee to be restated at the reconvene portion?
Seeing none.
Item 15.2 is the committee reports, and item 15.2.1 is from the Finance and Labor Relations Committee. And there is one item listed for consideration, that the 2021 Council Committee and Subcommittee schedule be approved, and that staff be directed to schedule meetings accordingly. I would request that if there are to be an amendment to the start times, that they do be discussed now so that staff can proceed to schedule these meetings. I will also note that it is not solely an IT requirement, but also these electronic meetings do require additional staff time, and there could be additional costs related to overtime if we do resume our meetings electronically at their original start times.
Okay, seeing no hands, Councillor Clifford, are you moving adoption of the report?
Yes, sir. I am.
Seconder, Councillor Gaffney. Discussion. Not all those in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried.
So through your worship, the final item listed for consideration is the conformatory bylaw.
Bylaw 1112 can be read a first and second time. Moved by Councillor Vasilakos and seconded by Councillor Sabin. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. And third and final reading, moved by Councillor Ritzma and Councillor Gaffney. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? And that's carried. And then a motion to recess council and reconvene in camera in 10 minutes. Moved by Councillor Henderson and Councillor Beatty. All those in favor? Opposed? Any? That's carried. Thank you.